All right, Tristyn, I'm excited to have you on here today. This is something new. And over the next few weeks, you are my first of hopefully many agents that I get to talk to. You and I have had a great working relationship over the last year, maybe even 2 years. I know we've done a few deals together, but even just like seeing you around in Fountain City, I love a lot of the work that you do in there. So, Tristyn, right off the bat, go ahead and tell us about yourself.
So, my name is Tristyn Golden. I am a Fountain City agent. I'm local to this small river town that I love so much. I work for Coffee House Realty, and they're based out of Houston, Minnesota. It's a small real estate company. I work alongside my coworker Mitch Walsh quite a bit and my broker Bob Carlson. They're kind of paving my way into this real estate world, and they've graciously taken me under their wing and showing me the ropes. So yeah, I am a small town local agent right in Fun City here. Fountain City is a wonderful area. And being an agent in a smaller town, there's a lot of camaraderie that you wouldn't get otherwise in a bigger city. You know, people in small towns, they come together, they help one another. They're always reaching out a helping hand. But yeah, I like it. I am a newer agent myself, and so far so good. I think I've hit some pretty good numbers, and I'm looking forward to keep on doing it.
Nice. Yeah. And so you started in the middle of COVID, right?
Yes, I started in the middle of COVID. Nobody kind of had any idea what was going to happen. But I started March 1st, about a year and a half, 2 years ago.
So about a year into COVID, you came around.
Yes,
Okay.
going crazy. It was an interesting market to be a new agent, but in that market, it was easy to sell anything. You had a buyer and they were willing to outbid everyone and even listing houses. If you had a listing, it was sold within a matter of hours. But now in this market, it kind of seems like we're almost at a plateau. We're still very much having over asking offers. Winona, Fountain City area, there is some linen dealing to be done. It depends on the house. Every situation is different,
Yep.
but it is an interesting market for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And so as a new agent coming into what was really kind of like a high end peak of listing and everything else, what did you
Yeah.
find was the way you were able to become successful as you did?
Resilience is really the key there. A lot of new agents, they'll get started and, they won't sell a house for the first couple months and they just want to quit and throw in the towel. You just have to be resilient. You have to keep trying. You need to have a lot of follow up done with your clients. You just got to keep pushing. And if you do continue to do that, in 2, 3, 5 years down the road, you're going to have repeat buyers, repeat
Yep.
business. And that's really it's all about is keeping that clientele and staying in touch with your past clients and follow up is huge.
What tool or process do you have in place to actually follow up with your clients? Because realtors are bad at this. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Like they're really bad at it.
Well, basically for me, I every Monday morning I'll have my coffee and I'll sit in the sunroom and that's kind of my thing. I'll go through any client that I worked with in the past, week or 2 weeks, and I'll just send them a text. Hey, how are you? Any houses you're looking at lately? Just to get in front of them and continue to show them like, yes, I am here for you. I want to help you see through this buying process and just getting your name and face in front of them just so they don't forget about you. Because
Yeah.
it's very easy to, it's very easy to lose clients. And as far as there's so many agents, it's very saturated. So you really have to be the person that you're their go to. You're who
Yeah.
they can rely on.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like that.
But
It's
yeah.
staying top of mind, right?
Yeah. But for me, it's just setting a schedule for myself. So whether it's every Monday, just, an hour of follow-up or whether it be half an hour just so I can sit through and touch base with everyone. Just set yourself up a schedule and keep doing it.
Yeah. I think so. Before you were a realtor, you were doing what?
Before I was a realtor, I was selling cars for Bell
Okay.
Chevrolet, Winona.
Yeah. So
I'm selling.
sales, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the interesting things with going from corporate to this if you aren't there every single day, you're
Mhm.
not going to make any money. And with real estate, it can be that same way that if you don't have somebody like driving you to wake up on time, start your
Yeah.
schedule, do everything like that, you could, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Oh, I'll do it tomorrow. And it's 3 months later. And like you said, very often new agents and
Yeah.
agents that have been in the business for 20 years can go, months and months without actually having a single sale or even a lead that they followed up with. So
Yes. That is correct. It's you have to be in control of yourself and understanding what it takes to get the job done, and you got to keep yourself motivated.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. We were talking about the market as it is today versus even just 2 years ago. As you mentioned before, what's really interesting about 2 years ago was it was all about speed. Who could get to the house fastest? Who could make an offer fastest? And then
Mm,
try and just scoop it up before anybody else would see it.
yeah.
Today, it's changed a little bit. You want to talk about that?
It definitely has changed. And the markets that I'll be talking about is, Fountain City, Winona, and surrounding local areas like Buffalo City, Alma, so on and so forth. So in these markets, we are still seeing multiple offers. There are buyers that are bidding over asking. However, if you're like most buyers and you want to get a deal, everyone would like to have a better deal when they're buying a house.
Yeah.
When you're searching for your next house, if you find a listing that's been sitting on the market for 14, 21 days,
Yep.
that's the house you need to go and look at because likely at that point in time, you're able to bid under asking and you're
Yep.
able to get seller credit. And, that's just the best way to do it at this point. But that's not to shy away from the the problem that we still have, which is lack of listings, and that's keeping the prices high and
Yep.
elevated, and that's what's causing the over asking offers to continue on.
Yeah, that demand piece. As you mentioned, what we didn't have 2 years ago was those homes that would even sit on the market. The traditional mindset is, hey, it's been sitting on the market. There's one of two reasons. It's priced too high or
Mhm.
there's something wrong with it. And
Yes.
what I've heard you say, and I'm like really agreeing with it is, hey, just because a home has been sitting on the market a long time does not mean there's anything wrong with it. Go check it out. My wife and I purchased a property that was 360 days on the market. We went there and we went, "Why is this still here?" Like,
Yeah.
we did our inspection, we did everything else that we were looking at, but, like, we were confused why it hadn't got scooped up, and it's totally that mentality of, "Oh, it's been on the market 30 days," or even, like, 14 days, people stop looking at it, right?
Yes.
So,
That's
I love that as a home buyer tip. On the flip side of that, let's say you're listing a property
mhm.
and it's sitting out there longer than 30 plus days. What's your recommendation for sellers and agents on like, hey, how do we
Yeah.
get this sold?
Well, my recommendation there would be try new listing photos. Get some different angles, change your cover photo,
Yep.
refresh the listing. And if that doesn't work yet, open houses. Have your agent have an open house, bring people in, offer snacks, water bottles, whatever it may be to get the person into that door. And if it comes down to it, maybe reconsider your price. Prices 2 years ago aren't standing today anymore. They're not necessarily going down. They are
Yeah.
at a
Yeah.
plateau is what I would say. A lot of sellers are still stuck in this idea of where we were 2 years ago, where everything was selling, didn't matter what it was. That discussion could be revolved around price if first listing photos and open houses doesn't get the job done.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. And one of the other benefits of adjusting the price, even a small amount, is that those third party apps like Zillow, Realtor, Truly, all of those, the
Mhm.
moment you change the price, guess where it goes? Right back on top for everybody to see
Yeah.
it, right? Doing a price adjustment in conjunction with brand new cover photos. I was just helping out a realtor up in Pittsville with brand new drone photos for their cover
Yeah.
photos. And that was the strategy. Brand new photos,
Yeah.
just a slight price adjustment so that it pops up and says price reduced. We're excited to see what happens this week.
Yeah. It's a great idea. Yeah.
One of the things that we saw with COVID that really helped everybody in that buying mentality is we had an all-time low interest rates. Now today, they spiked like we weren't expecting them to, but then they didn't keep growing. They've really hovered at 7% for what would you say, the last year now?
I would say maybe in the last 6 months or so, they've been hovering around 7%. Prior to that, they were staying around 6.5%. They finally have tipped over into 7% and beyond. And with the interest rates, as far as that goes, everyone's wondering what's going to happen. Where are they going to go? What's going to happen next year? And unfortunately, there's no way to really nail down what could happen. Is there going to be a recession? Are we in one already? Who knows? But what we do know is that the feds have come out and said that they're going to have two more interest rate hikes. And so far, they've been doing everything they've said, even though inflation has come down nationally, that still isn't enough for them to bring the rates down.
Yeah.
So I would expect interest rates to go higher even near the end of this year.
Okay.
Another
So
type of
even
rate.
even though we've only got a few months left of the year, you're thinking that they are gonna go. So have they said kind of how high they're gonna go? Do you know?
A mortgage broker would be better to answer the question as far as percentages wise. But for the people that are hoping and praying for the interest rates to come down, I wouldn't necessarily bank on that happening due to the fact that they came out and said that, yes, we're going to continue these rate hikes and we're going to continue to battle inflation.
Yeah.
So if you're banking on them coming down, I wouldn't necessarily hope for that for another couple of years yet.
Yeah. Your advice to home buyers is, hey, go get a home if you're planning on going to get home, if it's the right time, right?
It's the right time. Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's no specific time that is better to buy a house or not. The market is going to do what it's going to do no matter what. My
Yep.
suggestion would be, find a house you really love.
Yeah.
And if you're planning on keeping that house for a long term, 4, 5, or 6 years, sometime during that duration, there could be a chance to refinance your loan, a chance to get that lower interest rate.
Yep.
You know, it is possible for a long term hold, but for somebody that's just needing a house short term, it's just the high interest rates, then no hope for them to come down is kind of what they're dealing with.
Well, and
But
it's interesting that you talk about length of time in a home, right?
Mhm.
Because, very often people move to a new area and they're like, hey, I got a new job. I want to get a new home. And they're not looking necessarily, hey, am I going to have this job 2 years from now, 4 years from now, 10 years from now, right? Then we go and make a large investment.
Mhm.
And then 2 years later, we go to try and sell it, and we haven't actually increased enough to like recoup our costs, right?
Yeah.
So that's really interesting dynamic. And I appreciate that you tell people, hey, let's talk about the length of time that you're going to be here, right?
That
Yeah.
is something to consider.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I love that conversation specifically around homes being an investment
Mhm.
and specifically around the appreciation of a home, right?
Mhm.
Hey, yeah, I know that $1,000 a month seems like a lot today, but if nothing changes, cost of your mortgage will never increase. The
Mhm.
value of this house, even in 5 years, let's say it's a $200,000 house, growing at 4%, it should be about 240 to 250. You gained $50,000 worth of equity sitting here versus going and renting somewhere where somebody else gained 40, $50,000 worth of equity. Yeah, let alone then 10 years, which is just gets exciting.
That's a great point. There's so many reasons why to buy a house. Equity is one of the benefits and gaining the equity over time. That's why I think a home purchase is still in today's market the smarter choice
Yep.
versus renting.
Yeah.
You know, at least
And
your money is building and going somewhere.
yeah. Yep, I'm right there with you. Let's talk about interest rates real quick. So I pulled up a mortgage calculator looking at a $200,000 property, 7% interest rate. We're looking at about a 1,300 a month in mortgage. If
Yeah.
the interest rate jumps up to 7.5, we're just up to 1,400.
Yeah.
If we go up to 8, right? Well, I did 78% mortgage rate. That would be insane. We're really only at 1460. $100 can make or break a lot of people, but is $100 a month a reason to wait to see maybe if it drops or anything like that, right? And even going in the other direction, let's say we drop suddenly to 6%. Yeah, it's still only $100 difference, right, per month.
Yeah. I would say I don't think $100 or $200 is worth waiting on to buy your first home.
Yeah.
Because, notoriously, if we're just looking back at the past few decades,
Yeah.
you put it 20, 30 years ago, one thing real estate has done and is certain to continue to do is it's going to continue to appreciate in value. Real estate is an appreciating asset.
Yeah.
So, there's going to be markets that have a downturn, upturn, whatever the case may be. One thing you know for sure is it's going to continue to appreciate.
Yeah.
That's why I think for the folks that want to buy their last house or want their vacation home or something that they're going to hang on to for 5, 10 years, I think it's a no brainer because they're going to gain so much more over that length of time.
I did the math, $100 per month, right? Times 12, 1,200 times 10 years, $12,000. The appreciation in that time is $96,000. 96,000 versus
Right.
1,200. And again, I'm saying that facetiously in the sense that's easy math. But if you don't have that extra $100, or like you said, you're not going to live there for 4, 5, 6, 10 years, then it doesn't make sense for you. Doesn't matter if it's only $100. It does not make sense for you. Don't buy. There's nothing wrong with that.
When you do buy real estate, you want to have it be a comfortable purchase.
Yeah.
It's a big life decision to spend $300,000, $400,000, or even for a first time home buyer. That's such a huge thing to do. So definitely make the right choices and do what's best for yourself and your financial capability.
I'm right there with you. Tristan, obviously, one of the big things that we're dealing with as realtors is there's just not enough inventory, right? And so, what would be your recommendation for those that are thinking about selling and why now is actually a great time to sell a home?
Well, I think anytime is really a great time to buy or sell real estate because there's definitely benefits to each market that we're in and people can find those benefits. But as far as selling right now, I think we're still seeing a little bit of inflated prices, but who knows what's going to happen in the future. Right now might be a good time for you to get the most out of your home, in my opinion. But again, who knows what could happen? Nobody really does. So,
Yeah, nobody's got a crystal ball, right?
right. A lot of folks have a lot of equity in their homes and they're able to tap into the equity and use it elsewhere, whether it be a down payment for a nicer home, a larger home. You know, if that's something that you were considering doing, I mean, why not?
Yeah. Do you typically work with first time home buyers or last home buyers or people that are in transition?
All over the place. I do enjoy working with first time home buyers because I still am learning quite a bit myself. And I think helping them through the process will only make me a better agent. But I do work with a lot of out of state people looking for vacation homes, along the river. They want that river view. I do work with folks that do want to buy their last home and they have to work through that transition of selling their home and of course getting an accepted offer on their new one. Maybe they're downsizing. So really all over the board. Whoever is willing to work with me, I'm happy to work with them.
Well, and one of the reasons I bring that up, and you talked about it, right? Using that equity that I have today, right? So let's say I am in my 40s, 50s, maybe even in my 60s, and I've got all this equity built into my current property. Unbeknownst to most, there actually might be enough there to sell and completely outright buy a new property so that you have no mortgage whatsoever, right? And
Yeah,
still have some left over for retirement or something like that.
that's
Very often you hear about the stories of people buying a home in like the 90, 100,000, 120 range that is today worth 350, 400. And I mean, they've got a ton of options,
Yeah.
especially if they're looking just to downsize.
I would agree. I think it's a great benefit to them. And, obviously verify with your latest tax accountant. But if you own that home and lived in that home as your primary residence for the last 2 years, you can even avoid capital gains tax.
Yep.
Well, all of that equity, that can go right into your bank account and nobody can take it away from you. You can use it for that new truck or that new vehicle alongside with the idea of downsizing into something where you won't have to have a mortgage payment. For
Yep.
some people, a lot of people, that might be a good choice for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so on average, most people's monthly home cost is about $1,000 plus. And if you wipe that out, that's a good chunk of change that you don't have to worry about again in retirement or even just as you've got kids growing up and other
Yeah.
pieces to it.
David, I have a question for you. Do you have any tips for first time home buyers?
Yeah, without a doubt, I do. I really am a big budget guy. If you haven't set up your budget and you haven't talked to your lender, I'm of the belief that you shouldn't even be looking at homes yet. Right. Which, sucks for me to say as a realtor because I'm saying somebody else should be your first conversation and then come talk to me. But if you don't have a lender that you want to talk to, come talk to me. I'll connect you with one of my top 2 lenders. They are great with working with first-time home buyers, and they will get you all set up, and then we'll go look at homes, right? The worst thing that can happen is you're thinking, "Hey, I make 60,000 a year. I should be able to buy a $300,000 home." But the lender then comes and tells you, "Hey, you can really only afford maybe 180,000." And you've already went and looked at a bunch of homes and you're like, "Well, now this is where I'm supposed to be." No, you should start with the money and then go look at homes.
I wholeheartedly agree with that statement. It is so important as a first home buyer to have that conversation with your lender and understand how much can I afford. It's not so much about what you can be pre-approved for,
Yep.
what is your budget? As a first time home buyer, I would recommend writing down, here's my expenses now. What can I still take on?
Yep.
Set up your own budget and you need to understand how much you can spend. Can I spend 150? Can I spend 200?
Yeah.
That is a question that needs to be answered because the worst thing you want to have happen is getting under contract for a house and going to your lender and finding out that your mortgage payment is just too expensive.
Yeah.
You know, definitely that would be my tip too.
Yeah.
And then-
Well, and even like a step further, right? The bank approved you. You got the house, you're now in the house, and that first mortgage payment comes through and you're like, "Wait, I'm not making enough here. Like
yeah,
this doesn't line up," right? You should definitely be thinking about what is your budget before. That way, there's no scare factor that suddenly pops up.
correct. I 100% agree.
Yeah. On the flip side then, Tristan, what do you recommend that all first-time home buyers go do?
I would recommend, I was a first time home buyer myself at one point in time. I think the best thing that helped me was talking to multiple lenders and understanding my options.
Mhm.
What programs are out there to help me? You know, how is this going to benefit me in the long run when purchasing this home? There's first time home buyer programs where there's down payment assistance. When I bought my first home, that ultimately helped me a lot.
Yep.
I think I brought $1,000 to closing and I was closing on my first house. So talking to lenders and not only talking to lenders, but talking to multiple agents and understanding what can they provide you as a first time home buyer? How are they going to help you along this process? You want to be comfortable with who you're working with. Buying your first home is such a big deal and you really want to be comfortable and you want to make it happen. And we want to help you make that happen too.
There's a lot of stress that goes on with the process. Having a
Last,
rubbish realtor should not
yes.
be one of them because
Yes.
it just piles it on.
Yes. You
Yeah.
definitely need someone to have your back when that inspection comes back and it's not compliant or if there's a repair needed. You
Yeah.
definitely want to have a good team helping you negotiate those repairs and making sure that, you get this done. So,
Yeah. The 3 biggest people that I always recommend that everybody talks to. 1, your realtor. to your lender, and then a home insurance provider too. Whenever I
Very
bring on a new client, I'm like, here are my top two lenders, here are my top two home insurance people. Go ahead and start these conversations just so that you've got that foundation before we even get into the craziness of an accepted offer and everything that goes with that.
Yeah, it's very important to understand how much your insurance could cost. So, for example, my primary residence now is this big, beautiful home that has 77 stained glass windows. And the replacement cost on those windows, we had no idea, but it's pretty unaffordable, as you
Yeah.
can imagine. So,
Yeah.
negotiating your insurance down and understanding what's going to work for you and understanding your payment, it's definitely one of those conversations to be had.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. Again, going back to your budget and planning ahead and, what you don't know is what's going to affect you the most, right?
Yeah. The more planning and the more research you can do for yourself so you understand everything, the process, the better off you'll be.
Yeah. You made a really good point about low to zero down payment options, as well as then previously you talked about homes that have been sitting on the market for 30, 60, 90 days are open to seller concessions. Can you talk through a scenario where you can do zero down payment and also almost have no closing costs?
For a 0% down payment, there is a few loans like USDA loans, for example, rural development loans, where 0% down is a benefit. And I suggest everyone looks into different programs to understand where are you going to be living. If you're living in town, USDA isn't going to quite work for you, depending on how big or small your city is.
Fountain City mostly is allowed to
Most-
use USDA. So
Yeah,
in town means like in big town, like Winona, La Crosse, like those kind of places. But a lot of Wisconsin and Minnesota is USDA like open. Yeah.
yeah. And, if you're curious, if the home you're looking at, if you're curious to see if it would even qualify for that USDA loan, reach out to your lender and they'd be able to tell you.
Yeah.
Uh, but as far as loan down payment options, of course, there's the fan favorite, FHA. That's 3.5% down. That's a very low down payment that same home buyers and other folks can take advantage of. As well as that, there are VA loans. VA loans require 0% down also.
Yep.
So very nice. But as far as seller concessions, when I'm working with a buyer, I have to ask the questions of how much do you have down to purchase this home? Your realtor might ask those awkward questions, but you have to get down to the bottom of it. And let's say if you have a buyer that only has a few thousand, but they still want to buy their dream home. Number one, I would suggest continue to save money. But
Yep.
another suggestion that I would have is ask for seller concessions. You can ask for a 3% down, sometimes more from the seller of the total
Yep.
purchase price.
Yep.
And that would cover almost all of your down payment.
Yeah. And so I'll use this as an example, right? A $200,000 home with a 3.5% FHA is $7,000. The FHA, if you ask for 3%, they're going to give you 6K to go ahead
Yeah.
and pay that off. That means that your down payment's only $1,000 that you have to do. And in fact, you with an FHA, you could even ask for more than that and have them completely pay for that. Now, one thing to keep in mind there is there's your down payment, but then there's also your closing costs. But that seller concession can go towards either down payment or closing costs there. So, yeah, there are options to have very, very little in the game to get a house.
Correct. And, one option that I suggest to all of my first time home buyers is I kind of hint at this sometimes, as far as buying rentals.
I love the fact that you said that you hint at this. I don't even hint. I just come straight on saying it.
Rentals is a great way to build equity and wealth over time. In most cases, a lot of buyers will come to me and they'll say, well, I can't afford the mortgage payment.
Yep.
So then I ask the question, well, what if somebody else helped you out with that mortgage payment? What if you buy a duplex or a triplex?
Yeah.
In most cases, you can almost live for free.
Yep.
And to obtain this, rental, you're going to live there. It's going to be your primary residence. So the loans you get are the same as as you would if you were to just go purchase a home as far as your down payment goes. Rather than putting down 25% on a rental, you can put down, 3%, 5% for
Yep.
conventional financing. And all of a sudden you have this cash flowing asset and, that's eating up most of your mortgage costs. I think that's a fantastic idea. And I think more first time home buyers should consider that greatly.
I will never buy another property that isn't at least paying for itself 50% of the way. Where we are today, our mortgage is 90% covered by somebody else. And as a first-time home buyer, that's big, right? If you can save, let's say 500, that's 6,000 in mortgage costs every year that somebody else is paying for you. And then on the other side of that, as a rental, when you're trying to go get the loan, you can count up to 70% of the expected rents
Yeah.
towards your income. So it actually helps you get a higher loan too. So
Yes.
I love house hacking. I'm a big fan of talking to literally anybody and everybody about it. And I have to almost like apologize for me bringing it up the third and fourth time
Yeah.
when I'm looking at a house going, look, you could live here for nothing.
I know.
Literally, it would cost you nothing to live here.
It's such a great idea, and it definitely alleviates some stress that a buyer might have
Yeah,
as far as making that mortgage payment.
yeah,
And
yeah,
not only that, keep doing it. Keep buying them year after year. And
yep,
eventually, if you're motivated, you could have 5 rentals in, 5 years or less.
yep.
I think that's such a great idea, and by the time you're ready to retire, you'll have this asset probably paid off depending on how your age, of course. I think it's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, that's huge. I don't think you and I've talked about real estate investing at all. Do you guys own properties?
We we own our primary residence in Fountain City, but we don't have any rental investments. We're looking.
Yet?
Yeah.
Okay, it sounded like it
We're
sounded like
looking.
there was a yet there. So,
Yeah, we've written offers, and we're always actively keeping an eye out.
nice. Yeah, so I'll talk about our experience today. Today we own 3 properties, total of 7 units, and all of them are completely paying themselves off. Like I said, our current primary property has a midterm rental attached to it, and we are right around $125 that we pay in mortgage each month.
That's
That's it.
fantastic.
Yep. So I'm
There's a flawed.
thank you. I'll take it. It's
Yeah.
it's a different mindset. And honestly, it's the reason I became a realtor was to do and understand real estate investing, right? So my wife and I have always been on that path of like, hey, how can we retire before 65? How can we retire before 45, right? When you look into it, definitely one of the safest long-term ways is real estate investing. And I love that you talk about rentals and how to do rentals with first time homebuyers because it is very powerful. I cannot preach about it enough.
Yeah, I agree. I have a question.
Yeah.
So you live in Buffalo City, is that correct?
Yep. Yeah. We're about a block from the river here.
Oh, lovely. So how many folks live in this town?
Buffalo City is right around 1,000. And then we're right next to Cochrane, which is about another five to 600. So yeah, pretty small.
So as far as is there any disadvantages or advantages to being a realtor in a small town?
Yeah, that's interesting. The biggest advantage is that you really get to know everybody that's around you, right? And everybody knows everybody else that lives here. And so the moment you can become a good and trusted realtor, people will come and refer to you and that's awesome, right? That's such a good feeling. The disadvantage is of course there's just not enough deals here, right? Last year, I did 30% of all the sales that were in Buffalo City, which sounds like a lot, but that's only three. I, as a realtor, cover a very large area. I go about an hour in every direction from me. Mainly, I love to drive, but also just because then I can actually get the volume of transactions that I'm looking to do, right?
I would agree. As far as me being in Fountain City, luckily I'm right on the border of Minnesota. So I would go just about the same as you, an hour in every direction. So
Yeah.
I have an advantage of being on. almost both sides of the river.
And you're dual license, right? You're both Wisconsin and Minnesota?
Yep, that's correct.
Nice. What was the deciding factor for you to go and get both sides of your license for both states?
I had been working in Winona, Minnesota for
Mhm.
quite some time, and I loved the area. And I had recently moved to Fountain City, Wisconsin, and I still wanted to continue to work with everyone that I had met in that side of the river. And so for me, it was a no brainer living on the Wisconsin side and only a 10-minute short drive to get across the bridge and into Minnesota.
Yeah.
So for me and for my clients too, when I first started, I had only my Minnesota real estate license, but I had clients that wanted to view houses on the Wisconsin side. That's ultimately why I chose to get both licenses.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense.
And so far it's worked out. I would say I sell about 50% in Minnesota and 50% in Wisconsin.
That I really like hearing. Very often, realtors will be dual license and then it's like 90-10, right?
Yeah.
I love the fact that you are right next to the border. I'm sure you do the same thing I do. We get groceries in a different state, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you've got a good split of the two different states for your like clients that you service. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Tristan, this has been fantastic. I've got one last question for you. Is there something that you enjoy?
I really enjoy boating. My husband and I, we have a big old Carver. It's a 36-foot houseboat, essentially. That's our lifestyle. We both enjoy to do it together and staying at the marina and having our closest friends around us. It's really a great thing for us. In addition to that, I really love skiing. I love being outdoors. I love
Yeah.
downhill skiing. And again, my husband, he snowboards. I'm the skier, but every weekend we would go and we would hit the slopes. And so, as far as what I like to do, I just love being outside. So,
Awesome. Love it. Well, Tristan, again, thank you so much for joining us. That's all we've got for today. Thank you so much.
all right.